Good morning, listeners. You're welcome to this week's Ag Report. I'm Jim Finn. My guests later on this morning are Michael O'Grady from Clonmel Credit Union, Anne Marie Butler, who is the head of education with Chagas, talking about a new program called Altitude. And my final guest this morning will be Declan Hanrahan, who is the IFA's National Livestock Chair, with changes to the movement of cattle. My first guest this morning is Katie Fraser from Chagas, and Katie is in the Clonmel office. Good morning, Katie, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Okay, now, Katie, you want to, I suppose, give farmers advice in transitioning from milk or replacer to solids at this particular stage.
Yeah, so I suppose now is the time that people are starting to look at their calves in the shed, if they bought them or if they have bred them, that are getting to an age now that you're thinking, okay, we're getting close to transitioning off the milk and onto a solid diet.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose there's a few pinpoints that you should be trying to aim for. And the big one really is to make sure that, first of all, the calf is eating enough concentrate. So you want to make sure they are getting plenty of fresh concentrates every day. So little and often is important. The molasses will bring them to it a bit more when it's little and often, instead of putting out a load and then walking away for a few days. The big, I suppose, aim that you should go for is that the calf should be at a live weight of about 100 kg by 12 weeks of age. So really, like those calves that were born the first week in February or that are hitting your 10, nearly 11 weeks of age now. So if they're getting to that 100 kg, you should be able to see that they're eating more concentrates and more roughage, and you can reduce the amount of milk that you're actually giving them. So it's important to really reduce the milk intake bit by bit and stretch it out over a 7 to 10 day period. Don't just take it away from them, because that will upset their stomach, it will upset everything. It can be a stressful time, so it's to do it as slow and steady as you can and make sure that they are actually getting the concentrates, like that they're taking that in.
Right, okay. Any other tip then, particularly when they are completely weaned off? I suppose it's time to introduce them to grass as well at that particular stage?
Yeah, so getting them out to grass is important then as well, to keep that rumen development going. So with the help of good straw being given to them, supplemented to them in the shade,
Mm-hmm.
increasing that and actually getting them out to a field and making sure that that is still available. So don't just leave them out in the field and think, sure, they're fine. A bit of straw in the field, a bit of roughage that they're used to is really important as well, because they will actually digest that, break that down, and it slows down the system and increases the rumen development as well. So getting them out in small groups is important, making sure that your weights are, like I say, 100 kg, and that they're actually at the weights that they are. There's no small lad in the middle of them all.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure
Yeah.
that you put them in groups that are similar.
Right, and would you consider bringing them in at night time? I know we're talking now in the first week or going into the second week in April. It can still be pretty rough at night time.
Yeah, it would be definitely advisable, especially with the weather we've had, when they've been in a shed all the time, 24/7, to encourage that they go out and in, that they have access to go into someplace, lie down, that they're comfortable and used to as well, is really important for the first few weeks of transitioning them out. And again, having your concentrates and the straw in the shed, or even having the straw and concentrates outside, like, it's to make sure that they are still eating as much as they had been with the excessive grass then as well, and keeping the stress low. Like, the big thing with calves is at weaning, don't be trying to do everything at the one time, Transition off milk is stressful enough for them. So it's important to, don't go vaccinating and taking them off milk really fast. Like, space out things so that they're not getting stressed and worked up.
Okay, so the main thing is, to make certain sure that the animals is comfortable, isn't under stress, and feels quite safe in the new environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you want to also touch on, I suppose, silage ground at the moment. That, again, I suppose the weather has played a lot of tricks on farmers this year.
Yeah, so the big thing with the weather has been so hard, like, with all the rain that's fallen, and some areas are still quite wet. It's important that if you haven't gotten out with slurry and there is a cover of grass, maybe look at just using fertilizer. You need to get it closed off with about 100 kg of nitrogen per hectare for your silage ground, which is 80 units. In real time, 80 units, it takes every day 2 units is taken from the grass. So it's, the grass utilizes 2 units a day. So in real time, you're looking at least 6 weeks before that nitrogen is taken out of the grass that you can cut it. So really trying to get closed off now if you can. If it has been just grazing most recently, get out slurry. We nearly don't utilize slurry enough, and I suppose with the price of fertilizer and everything now, it's important to use what slurry you have in the shed and get the tanks emptied as well for next summer or next winter.
Yeah.
The big thing, I suppose, get it closed off, get your fertilizer out, check your soil samples. If you have any soil samples taken in the last 4 years, they're still valid, because that will determine how much P's and K's you can spread on the land as well.
Okay, and of course, as you quite rightly said, fertilizer has got very expensive. It's also beginning to get scarce.
Yes, it seems to be a big issue. We haven't. I have been speaking to 1 or 2 merchants who are finding it harder, but the price is obviously a big downfall. Like, it's gone very expensive. So using your slurry is now is the time to be using it. Utilize it as much as you can, and you can actually, if people are interested, you can get slurry tested, and it's simple enough in that if you have agitated slurry, you get a 2-litre milk bottle, fill it with about 1 litre of slurry in it, make sure it's well sealed, and Southern Scientific and I'm nearly sure FBA, both labs will test it, and you'll know exactly what's in your slurry. And it's a really good tool to have, especially if you're using the same kind of feed, silage, and that. It won't change massively, from year to year.
Okay, the other big thing at the moment, we're fast approaching the 15th of May, and that is the BIS has got to be lodged by then. So what would you say to farmers who have been not been thinking about it at the moment? They'd want to start thinking, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So BIS deadline is the 15th of May. I can only speak for myself in that I hope to have all of my applications submitted by the first week of May so that I can cross-check things. There are a few other schemes like the Sheep Welfare Scheme that has opened and it is closing on the 15th of May as well. And there's usually one or two others that pop up in the next week or two that will have the same date, the 15th of May. As well as that, as base derogation as well. So if you're a derogation farmer, that is closing on the 15th of May. So all feed dockets, feed statements need to be submitted to your advisor so that they can get the data correlated and put up on the system as well. So there is the 15th of May is only about 4 weeks away now at this stage. So time is of the essence.
Right, and of course, it is important to advise farmers. Now it's the time to contact their Teagasc advisor or their consultant who does this work for them and get it done, and to be sure that there isn't a backlog when it comes to the 15th of May. Okay, look at Katie, we're out of time. I want to thank you ever so much for joining us this morning. That, listeners, was Katie Fraser from Teagasc, and as I said at the beginning, Katie is in the Clonmel office. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Michael O'Grady, and Michael is the head of credit with Clonmel Credit Union, and Michael is with me to talk about packages that they have for the farming community in particular. Good morning, Michael, and thanks very much for joining us.
Morning, Jim. Thank you, and thank you to the listeners for having me on today.
Okay, first of all, tell us a little bit about Clonmel Credit Union.
Yeah, Clonmel Credit Union, I suppose, is ingrained in the South Tip area. It's a very busy credit union with a lot of offerings around personal lending, mortgage lending, business lending, but we're doing a huge amount on the agri lending, and I'm delighted to be able to talk to you about what we're offering on that side of the house today. I suppose just a little bit about the credit union that and our relationship with the farming community. That farming is absolutely central to what we do in Clonmel Credit Union, and we were founded to serve local communities, and particularly in the location where we are in rural Ireland, that has always meant supporting the farm families. And farmers and their families are a vital part of our membership, not just economically but socially as well. And we're delighted to be able to support farmers and be a viable alternative to the pillar banks and to other financial providers.
But Michael, when then did the credit union start lending to farmers? Credit unions really weren't for farmers, they were for people with low incomes living in our towns and villages. But when did you start doing business with farmers in Clonmel?
We've always been lending to farmers, probably in it might be classed as an agri loan, but it might be classed as a personal loan for the farm. But what we've done in the last few years is that we've listened to our farmers. We've commissioned surveys in relation to our farming membership, and they've said to us that there's two things they want. One is they've been frustrated with their own financial providers, and that there's been a long length of time to get decisions on applications, and they want somebody who will be able to turn decisions around quickly for them. The other thing then is they want somebody who they can meet face to face and come out on their farm. And but on top of that, then they've looked for the credit union to expand its offering from I would have based it on maybe smaller base loans, but we're doing substantial size loans in machinery, land purchase, farm upgrades, and we're willing to look at all finance options for farmers that are requests that they might have.
Looking then at you today and the package that you have, the amounts of money that you can give out in a loan. So if I was to ask you, how much money can you give a farmer that wants to buy a piece of land?
Yeah, so we'll give, there's two ways of looking at it. One is if they have some of their own money to put towards it, we'll give 75% of the value of the land. Now, I've been out on farms where say farmers have spent a significant amount of cash investing in their own infrastructure, or maybe even purchased a bit of land. And if that's the case, that they don't have the cash available to bridge the 25%, what we'll do is we might take additional land on the basis that we've evidence that they have spent that money elsewhere. And it's about becoming solution focused with farmers, and that, you know, one size doesn't fit all. And that's where I suppose when you go out on farm and you meet someone and you see what type of operation that they have, you can adjust and tailor the finance option for them, particularly when it comes to a big purchase like a land purchase.
Okay, and of course, machinery is a big purchase too nowadays,
Yes,
particularly if there is any kind of a decent scale on the farm. You're down in a part of Tipperary there around Clonmel where there's quite a few very big tillage farmers as well. So if they're buying equipment, the equipment is very expensive.
Yes, yeah, and we will look at that, and you know, we'll lend a significant portion, possibly on an unsecured basis as well. You know, but the one thing what we're seeing a lot of is second-hand machinery, good quality second-hand machinery that people are looking to buy, where they mightn't be able to get the finance from the bigger players in the market, where they will only finance the new machines. Credit union can become a very quick and very fast, effective option for second-hand machinery. But we'll also look at new machinery. But it's the prices just seem to be going up and up for these bigger machines.
Absolutely unreal, to be honest with you. But the machines are getting bigger as well. You mentioned that you're able to give a quick turnaround from application to approval. Any farmer listening to us this morning that deals with the bigger banks, as we might call it for the sake of calling them anything else, their turnaround is desperately slow.
Yeah, and this has been a big issue that probably, but a unique selling point for ourselves in that when they come to us, we're local. They can talk to us locally. The decisions are made locally. We're not going up to Dublin to look for someone else to come and make a decision for us. We have a very experienced team in place. Like if I have all information to hand from, say, bank statements and historical accounts and accounts confirmation, we can get an answer back possibly within a few hours, depending on the size of the loan. But if it's a bigger loan, it would only take a matter of days. It wouldn't be any longer than that once all the information is there. And what we've seen is a massive uplift. Now, we haven't advertised massively, but we've, through word of mouth, the accountants around the South Tip area and the West Waterford area are now returning to us day by day because they're so frustrated with dealing with larger financial institutions that it's so much easier that they can ring their local credit union. We can offer more or less the exact same package that anybody else can offer, and they get that local service with a quick turnaround. And we've seen a massive growth, particularly in the last 12 months, from word of mouth, from people saying, "Oh, the credit union is the way to go." Thankfully, you know, and that's what we'll hope to maintain as the months and years go on.
Okay, now we have spoken about loans for land and loans for machinery. What about stocking loans?
Stocking loans, yeah, we will look at stocking loans, and we will tailor a package around kind of the purchase, and we'll might do, say, an interest-only facility or a bullet payment at the end. Nothing too dissimilar to what the farming community would be used to. But yeah, definitely an option on the stocking loan side. What I've noticed is its prices have become very, very expensive. Particularly buying calves. I heard prices this morning on the nearly 600 plus marker. I was a bit surprised at, but we will definitely look at stocking facilities as well.
Very, very important. And maybe moving a little bit away from the actual agricultural side of it. Somebody wants to build a house on their farm, or a son or a daughter. You're in the business of offering a loan for that as well, are you?
Yeah, so our mortgage, the three main areas that have grown significantly are in the last 18 months have been mortgages, agri and home improvement loans. and there is a shortage of supply of houses around the area, and house prices have been pushed up and material costs have increased. But we will look at self-built mortgages. We will look at switcher mortgages. We've looked at new build mortgages and just general purchase mortgages. But if someone is looking to build on their land, we'd be only delighted to talk to them. Richard Thompson is our mortgage advisor here in Clonmel, very experienced, 20 plus years experience, and would be delighted to talk to any of the farming community if they had a mortgage ask.
Okay, one last question on the lending. Does the person have to be a member of the credit union for you to give them a loan?
No, and we've had a huge influx of new members coming to us, as I said earlier, through word of mouth. As long as they have a banking relationship with somebody that we can see a track record, we've looked for bank statements, and like there's so much IT infrastructure in place now where you can do your checks on people between credit checks and different bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So there's no need for a member to be worried, or a new prospective member to be worried about not being a member of Clonmel Credit Union. We'll welcome with open arms.
Somebody listening to us this morning, whether they're from the farming community or, for that matter, from anybody in the community in here, particularly down in South Tipperary, and they say, well, I think I'll get in touch with the credit union. What do they have to do?
They can look for myself, give the credit union a call. They can go online. There's a lot of information on our website. I'm only delighted to be able to talk to people, particularly with people coming in with queries. I was just out there recently with someone that's looking for advice around land that's coming up for auction, and giving them a steer on what they might need. This might be a deal that they might be looking at now, but it might be in 2 months, 3 months' time, or 6 months' time. So I'm open. I can tell them whatever they need to have. But we've a very experienced team in place. So if it's not myself, it'll be Ger or Jack inside in the SME team. So we'll get them looked after if they give us a ring.
Okay, well, look at Michael. It was a pleasure talking to you. It's great to know that there is another big lender in Clonmel and the Clonmel area as far as the farming community are concerned, and indeed they're there for the community at large as well. That, listeners, was Michael O'Grady, who is the credit controller with the credit union in Clonmel.
Thanks a million, Jim. I really appreciate the time to talk to you today.
Listeners, my next guest this morning is Anne-Marie Butler, and Anne-Marie is the head of education with Teagasc, and she's with me to talk about altitude. Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thanks very much for joining us.
Morning, Jim, and thanks very much for having me.
It's good to have you back on air.
Absolutely,
Since your
absolutely lovely to hear from you.
Since your Agricultural Science Association days, but anyway.
That's right, so lovely to be back, Jim, and thanks for having me.
Oh no, always glad to have you, Anne-Marie. Now, what about altitude? This is something new to me, and I'm quite to be very new to most of my listeners, but it's in the field of education.
Yes, absolutely, and look, you mentioned new to you and others, but new to Teagasc as well. And I suppose just a little bit of background, Jim, as many of your listeners will know, in Teagasc, like across the country, in our colleges and in our advisory offices, we offer level 5 and level 6 further education courses, and we offer apprenticeships, which are higher education awards, and they're in agriculture, horticulture, equine and forestry. So I suppose a real diverse learner population, real diverse skills, like, if you're studying forestry and you're studying equine, obviously very different skills. But what altitude is about then, Jim, I suppose it's a national charter in tertiary education, so higher education, further education, where you're looking really at how you meet your learners' needs. So as we all know, the learner population and the population in general is, becoming increasingly diverse. Everybody has more complex lives, more complex needs, maybe more diverse needs. And some people will have greater needs than others. And what altitude looks at is how you were really setting up your education system and how you're trying to meet the needs of your learners. So instead of kind of designing courses for the majority and then trying to tweak it for what might be seen as the minority, you're trying to design for everybody, majority, minority, and that you're approaching, if it's your assessment, if it's your supports, if it's your physical environments, like how the colleges are set up, even access, and then the digital. So as you know well, Jim, it's a digital world that we're in, and it's looking at how you're delivering your courses, how you're assessing your courses, and really at the nub of it is that you're meeting the needs of learners. Now, it's a journey, to be honest, Jim, that we're on. This is a national charter. It's funded by the Higher Education Authority. There's a number of collaborators already there. But for Teagasc, we felt it was very important that we're also there because we want to ensure that our learners have at least the same experience as any other learner who's attending other educational providers, and to make sure that our learners, have a good experience with us. And I said that's a journey that we're on then, because there'll be small things we can do, and then there'll be obviously bigger things that we can do that might take a little bit longer.
My observation of how people going through the Teagasc educational system has been anecdotal, I'll admit, but anybody I talk to, they are extremely happy with how they have received their education with Teagasc, whether that's a Green Cert or beyond.
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose the beauty of our courses, Jim, is that practical nature. Mm-hmm. So for our learners, they typically spend maybe 50% of their time out and about, be it on a tractor or, as I said, on a horse, or out in a polytunnel if it's horticulture. And then there's obviously the classroom time. So that's, I suppose, our unique selling point, and that's the beauty of the courses, and I suppose that's the big praise we get from students, and particularly as well in terms of placement. The majority of our students will go on placement, and many are here in Ireland, and at the moment we have a lot of students abroad. They're in Australia and New Zealand and America and Germany and many other places. And I suppose that will continue, and we continue to grow on that. What Altitude does then is it just makes us look at maybe how we assess. So rather than asking everybody to sit down and do a written exam, is there other ways of doing it? Like, can you ask people to come in and do an interview? Can you ask people maybe to present a poster to you where you're also developing their communication skills and maybe their interview skills or their interpersonal skills? Because we've been doing a lot of work talking with industry and stakeholders on our courses, and I suppose the feedback we're getting, and only yesterday I heard Minister James Lawless talking about this in higher education, is that many students now maybe don't have those interpersonal skills that we might take for granted. So, the simple art of conversation, making eye contact, shaking hands with somebody, how you present yourself at an interview or how you present yourself at work. So it's looking at then how you're getting your student ready for, wider life and the wider world, but certainly developing those skills. And a big part of Altitude is just about that universal design. So, in other words, how can you make things a little bit more straightforward for everybody? It's not necessarily for somebody who's finding it difficult, but removing any barriers that are there. And one simple example, Jim, that actually came up at a conference that I was at recently was many courses now have a lot more international learners, and people who, haven't, lived in Ireland all of their lives. And if you're developing courses and all of your examples are about Ireland or about companies in Ireland, therefore you're nearly creating a disadvantage for people. So it's just looking even at your content and the relevance of that content for your learner. So some of these things are very, very small, and as I said, others then might be bigger projects like accessibility into your buildings, and ramps, and if it's braille on your signs. So there's a number of facets to it.
Right. So basically, if I look at it from what you have already told me, it does, I suppose, really look at the student and uses all the mechanisms that we use when we're learning and bring them all together to make certain sure that the student's experience is better than it has been in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for the majority of learners, the system as it is might be working really well for them. Mm-hmm. But some of the little pieces like that we've just been picking up on in the last couple of weeks when we were adopting the charter, can be sometimes even the use of a microphone if you're in a larger classroom. So if you have somebody with a hearing impairment or even a slight hearing impairment, the use of a microphone can be, profound for that person. It can be the lighting in classrooms. If learners are telling us that they are, neurodiverse or they have, additional needs in relation to their neurodiversity, sometimes the font, Jim, that's on a PowerPoint slide can cause stress or strain. So it's little things like that. It's also small things like making students aware if the time of the class has changed, if the length of the class has changed, and giving people prior notice. So some of these might be things we take for granted, but it's a kind of a good leveller to make sure that, as I said, look, we're across our 4 Teagasc colleges, the 3 private colleges, and then across the 13 regions that are within the advisory network. So it tries to, I suppose, add an element of consistency as well, so that if you're studying with us in Donegal or Kildalton or Gortine or wherever you are, that you're having, the same experience as others, but obviously that we're looking after people as we always have in the past.
And this is only for third level students.
Yeah. So it's for anyone in further education, which are ourselves, and higher education. And I think, like many of the members so far have been, universities and colleges. So for Teagasc, because we're funded, as you know, Jim, by the Department of Agriculture, we're a little bit different. But I think there's just 3 organisations, ourselves and 2 others, that are not in that kind of traditional bubble of higher education. So it's great, and I suppose, look, for us, it's just important that there's equitable access for all, and that our learners are at no disadvantage than if you went into any other higher education provider. So just to keep a level playing field for everybody. And look, it's an exciting time as well, Jim. It's very different. It's something that Teagasc hasn't done before. So we're getting our head around it and our ducks in a row. And as I said, some of it we've been doing already, like little things like making videos for learners, showing people skills. That's universal design. Teagasc has been at that for years. So some of these things we've been doing, maybe we just didn't know they fell in under the title of universal design.
Okay, now you have been doing it, because I would have covered it quite a bit on this program, and indeed the one I do in Clare as well. Somebody over the age of 23 wants to go and do a Green Cert. You make it very easy for them, to come back to education.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of options there, and actually only at the minute we're starting a promotional campaign to highlight to people right across the country what courses are going to be coming up between now and the end of the year. So you're right, Jim, people can come to us and they can study with us full-time or part-time, or they can do the kind of the distance course, which is, I suppose, more self-directed learning. And look, we're also looking at the moment, we're looking at those programs and looking at the content and just making sure they're up to speed. As you know, science and farming is changing all the time. And we're also looking, maybe we've been very focused on assessment, Jim. There's been a lot of exams in there, so we're trying to remove a little bit of that as well. And again, it's back to what I mentioned earlier. Can you assess things once? And, if somebody is talking to us about if it's tillage and how to establish different crops, can we also assess maybe their communication skills and how they tell us how they're doing that, as opposed to 2 exams, So look, we're very proud that we have such a national network. And if anybody ever has any queries, Jim, on any of the courses, don't hesitate to get in contact with myself or any of my colleagues, because we can always, I suppose, signpost people to where there's courses coming up in their region.
Okay, well, look at Anne-Marie, we're out of time. I want to thank you ever so much for filling us in and telling us a little bit about altitude. And I sincerely hope that Teagasc's experience in rolling this out to all the students that go through your colleges or through the distant learning mechanisms that you have will avail of it and be all the better for it.
Well, Jim, thanks very much, and thanks for having me.
That, listeners, was Anne-Marie Butler, who is the Head of Education with Teagasc. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Declan Hanrahan, and Declan is the Livestock Chair, National Livestock Chair with the IFA, and more importantly, he's with me to talk about what the new TB rules mean for farmers at livestock marts? Because these rules are coming into force on next Monday. So if you're heading to the mart next Monday, you will be under these rules. Declan, look, it's great to have you online here this morning. So what are the new rules and how are farmers going to greet them when they arrive at the mart?
To put it bluntly to you, the new rules, no one is happy with them, to be quite honest with you. The implementation of them has been because of the increase in the last number of years in the amount of reactors and where those reactors are coming from. A bit of background, both the EU have put pressure on Ireland to improve the TB situation and pressure on the department as well in that regard. So that's why what we were doing for years to maintain hasn't been working, and it's quite obvious to farmers and everyone concerned that it hasn't been working. And so there was an idea brought into place then that we'd have to change our direction. And what we would see, and I suppose a positive in the new changes, that the wildlife programme is going to be improved, because we can sit the whole day and talk. We have three hosts. Mm-hmm. We have the cattle, we have badgers, and we have deer. And we can sit and say which gave the TB first and all this, but you can't have a situation where one of the hosts is tested numerous occasions, and the other two hosts that carry TB are not treated with the same degree. So that's why, at least in this new programme, from what you read into it, is there seems to be a better emphasis on controlling it within wildlife also. So I think that's only one of the positives. But on to the movements of cattle and what is going to come down on top of farmers. If I just go ahead with what's being proposed there and a number of things. Look, there's a 30-day pre-movement test for dairy cows entering dairy herds. In other words, if you're selling cows, you're milking cows or heifers, and you're sending them on to a farm that is going to, for further milking, or that's going to be kept for a number of years, they need now a 30-day pre-movement test. Suckler cows and males over 36 months can move for 6 months after the clear test before they require a 30-day pre-movement test. So in other words, if you had a herd test on the 1st of January, you can sell those suckler cows and males over 36 months to the mart or whomever from January to June before they would require a 30-day pre-movement test. But if you went into September and October, and as I said, your test was in January, then you would require a 30-day pre-movement test, like what was in place a long time ago that we all remember. Cull cows for further fattening will not require a 30-day pre-movement test, but if they're bought into the herd that buys them, they cannot sell them on. Now, a lot of dairy cows would be bought by CFUs for further controlled finishing units. They would have they would be then sending them on straight for slaughter. They cannot bring them out to the market again. So that's where a lot of those dairy cows are sold on to. But that's the case. If you buy them, you can't turn them over again. You either have to sell them, then you have to take them on for finishing. The post-movement test option, that has been removed. Just on the other, a few more there, that if you have a breeding herd of over 80 cows or more, and if you're unfortunate to have a breakdown with TB, you have 80 cows or more, and 5% or 10 of those are reactors, you will then have to do the GIF test, GIF. It's the gamma interferon test. In other words, it's the blood test as well as the skin test. It will to maintain it should be more accurate, and to get down to the real, really take the reactors that are causing the trouble in your herd out of it. Look, the unfortunate thing is the farmer who is going to bear the brunt of this worse is the farmer that has actually the TB, because exposed in his herd, because then for a period of 2 years after that herd was exposed, that farmer cannot sell cows on they have to be sold. You can sell the CFUs, but they have to be more or less sold as fatteners. He cannot sell them on to another farmer for further milking or breeding. Just on another one there as well, females over 18 months and older, which have been exposed in a high-risk herd, they will be identified at the point of sale. So in other words, if I had reactors within the last 6 months, or I've finished up with I've got my 2 clear tests, and I sell heifers over 18 months in the mart, they will just show up that they come from a herd where there was a breakdown not so long ago. A lot of those heifers at that stage, there's no trouble again for farmers to buy them for further fattening. There'll be no issue in that regard, because as I said to you, a lot of the bigger finishers now would have CFU herds because of the continuous TB testing. That's where mainly on the cattle side, you know, they're encouraging as well. If you're a contract rearer and maybe you're taking in 2 or 3 different dairy farmers, calves or heifers, that they're trying to discourage that you would only work with one dairy farmer, and that's mainly what they're trying to discourage. Yeah, to having multiple herds on the one farm from multiple herds, that you would work with the one farmer only. Some are doing that, and it has no issue. More than are taken in. It depends on your circumstances. Look, the department are going to continue funding research into a vaccination and to find a vaccine for TB, which is good. There's a lot of research going on in the UK, and they're working with the UK to find a vaccination. Look, as I said, on the wildlife side, the badger will only be vaccinated to test negative, like, you know.
Right.
So
okay.
The department increased the wildlife operatives by 30%. So look, that's a thing that has been, you know, it's not so easy to get people to work in rough terrain and where badgers, you know, they with the sets and everything like that. So, you know, that's worked out through the Farm Relief Service. So if people or your listeners out there know that someone who is willing to do that kind of work, the department are always looking for operatives to put their names forward for that. You know, they'll do 2 sweeps of an area as well on the wildlife in the year as well. Look, there's a deer management unit set up also, and there's control of the population. A number of years ago, when we had Minister Ryan, he agreed that deers needed to be controlled. It wasn't because of TB or the destruction they were causing. Well, it was for the destruction of biodiversity and trees and everything like that. And that's why that has come into play. But all around the parts of Tipperary, Wicklow, where there's serious deer populations roaming around causing destruction. And look, as I said to you, you know, coming in on farms, and they're carrying TB. So there's a deer management unit set up to control those also. Look, the one disappointment again, and the IFA and I have put it strongly to the minister, the valuations of the cattle in the, you know, 3,000 on commercials, 5,000 on purebreds. We wanted that increase, and that's what we're looking for constantly. The minister put it to us that he's got an increase in the TB budget, but he has no more money to increase the valuations on the cattle. We say that that's not fair, because the majority of cattle that are falling into those categories of 3,000 and plus is on the lower side, and it should be within the remit of the department to find that money, because farmers, if valuation is given in the yard, that is the valuation of the animal, and that should be stood over if farmers are going to be asked to buy into this new regime when it comes to TB testing.
Okay, well, look at Declan, we're running out of time, but thanks very much for joining us this morning and trying to unravel what's going to happen on next Monday morning as far as the movement of animals are. And we should say that everything that you spoke about applies to farm movements as well.
As I said to you, yes, the very same applies. for farm-to-farm movements also. It's going to take farmers and it's going to take market managers are very conscious of it, have been on to the department. We have through ICOS and everything have worked with them to try and get the rules more manageable for both farmers and marks and everything, because as we know how vital marks have been in the last number of years, and we have seen that in the increase in cattle prices. Look, we've come under pressure this year on the beef side there in the last number of weeks, but how the trade has moved on and how vital the marks have been to that trade, and especially for live exports and everything like that. So it's something that we will constantly be working on and doing our best to improve it as it goes along.
Okay, well, look, Declan, thanks very much for joining us. That, listeners, was Declan Hanrahan, who is the National Livestock Chair with the IFA. That, listeners, is AgriReport for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you'll join me at the same time next week. Coming up next is the news at 10 o'clock, and after that, Eamon Dwyer presents Down Your Way.